Aerogramme is presented by Pinarello, and episode 2 is powered by the Pinarello Diodo Gravel. From Peloton Magazine, this is Aerogramme. We have an incredible episode 2 for you. We begin in Belgium at the famous 6-day event. We then hear the inspiring story of Waldek Stepniowski, manager of the Cliff Pro team, about how he defected from communist Poland and survived a refugee camp in Austria. We then head to Bentonville, Arkansas, and sit down with Jonathan Vaughters and take him through the Proust Questionnaire. We learn about Girona real estate from deputy editor Chris Frieswick of the Wall Street Journal, and we hear from Katie Compton and Gage Hecht after the unforgettable 2019 Cyclocross Nationals in Lakewood, Washington. Peloton's European associate James Start covered the Ghent 6-day event for us and was able to interview Elio Keys and his mechanic Kenny Latome in the middle of the action.
Elio, you're back home here in the Velodrome of Ghent. What's it like coming back here every year?
It's always a good event, and it's always full and packed, and there's a great ambience, always the same, which makes it super special. It's always good to be here, but it's also it's pretty hard after a road season to do this and to prepare. And this is my home race, so I cannot do it in half shape. I always have to be more or less
full on
in good shape. But it's a bad timing for the road season. It means you have no rest. After the road season, you have to prepare this. When this is done, start to prepare the next road season. So it's a bit hard, a bit difficult also because I'm getting a bit older. Before the switch from the road to the track, it was easy, but now it's pretty demanding.
It's getting harder. Yeah, you actually pretty much grew up here. Your father has a pub just around the corner. It's sort of the official bar of the 6-day here. This is really, really close to your home.
He didn't always do that. My father started here as a trainer, so I came here as a kid. Like, this was the only track we had. Could train here almost every day in the winter. And then a few years later, he opened the Velodrome at the Blameersen, where he was in the beginning he just did the bar, but after a while he got the manager. So then I was always training there, and now he has the bar here on the corner. So he's always been around, always close to cycling, close to the track.
And always close to the Velodrome. You must feel a lot of pressure here, maybe more than any other 6-day.
Yeah, for sure it's different. For me it's the most important one. It's also more or less the only one that I still do. The pressure is on, it's always on. I don't want to disappoint the fans. I want to do something special every year. But it gets more and more difficult.
You've won it several times. What's the secret to winning Ghent?
It's a combination of everything. It's a very short track, 166 meters, so technique is very important here. But of course you also need a good partner.
Do you ever get dizzy?
No. I can imagine you get dizzy when you're in the infield and drinking beers and you have to watch the race. But when you're on the track, no, you never get dizzy.
Really?
If you're dizzy, it's time to go home.
Because you're just too focused?
You have to be extremely focused. It's 12 teams on the track, 24 riders, 166 meters, and you will see. I have no brakes. They're everywhere. So they're underneath, they're over you. Guys coming in slowly. It's focused from the night till the end.
What's your favorite event?
In Ghent, they like the Dernies. Everybody loves the Dernies. You will see sometimes the arena gets a little bit less filled, I would say. But for the Dernies, they all come back up to the stands and then they go crazy. So for sure, that's a nice number every night. And in the past, there was also the team elimination. That's very spectacular, very fast. And the Madison, the longest one. That's where the 6 days got decided.
What is it about the Dernies? Just the ultimate speed?
It's super fast, super hard. You have to stay really close to the Dernie. The closer you are, the less wind you catch. So the easier it is. But it's not easy to stay this close to the Dernie because the track is so steep. And then, of course, it's always nice if the pacemakers, if they also do a little bit extra, like some good moves or nice attacks. It's not only the riders.
Yeah, you have a very special relationship always with the driver of the Dernie.
Yeah, the driver does the race. You just follow. If the pacemaker knows you, he knows how far you can go. and then you don't have to say anything. If you're riding with somebody who didn't ride with you before, you have to say "oh" or "allez," but then it gets complicated. The best is just to follow.
You don't have to talk. Okay. You got a great partner with Mark. I know he's very motivated. He's been here. Cavendish has been here since Thursday. So you guys, I think, it would be pretty hard to beat.
I don't know. I've seen some other guys on training that were also very spectacular. And of course, it's training. It's not a race. It's 6 days and so many things that can happen. So we will try. We do our best, and hopefully that will be enough.
Kenny Latome is one of the most famous mechanics on the World Tour. James talks to him about the difference between the Tour de France and the Ghent 6 days.
We're here with Kenny Latome, one of the world's greatest mechanics on the World Tour. But right now we're down in the pits of the Ghent 6 day. Kenny, you're coming back home in a sense. You've been working with some of the biggest teams in the world. You currently work with Dimension Data, but you're back home in Belgium after many years, and the 6 day here is really something special, I think.
Yeah, probably, like they always say, the 6 days of Ghent are like the Tour de France on the road. And of course, yeah, it's not far from where I live, so I know a lot of people in the crowds, and I'm actually a little bit nervous.
Really?
Yeah, even after 15 years.
This is your 15th?
15 years with professionals.
Okay,
yeah.
And you're nervous today?
Yes, I am.
Why?
It's just the atmosphere here. I was 7 years old when I came to watch this race.
For the first time, you were 7?
Yeah, I was sitting there, so it always has something special. If it's empty here, you come in this velodrome, and it has that atmosphere that
it has a magic.
Yes, it is.
It's just it has.
And then it's without the crowd. When the crowd starts to yell, that's even something special.
It has soul.
Yeah.
You know.
I still remember when Bradley and Cav won. I was actually almost crying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. What is it that is so magical about 6 day racing in general? I mean, there's, like you said, you've done the Tour de France, you've done all these great races. We don't talk about 6 days that much, but the people who know it, they know it's something really special.
But it's special because it's unpredictable. You have to be strong for 6 days long. Plus the tactics, I don't believe that there are a lot of tactics. It's more like the strongest that survives.
So, after 6 days.
Yes.
And a lot of times it comes down to the 6th day.
Yeah, always. There are always 3 or 4 couples that are like very close in the classement, and it comes until the last moment. So if you lose your concentration for one moment, your GC can be over.
Yeah. What, as a mechanic, it makes it particularly difficult to work? I mean, you've worked in Paris-Roubaix, you've worked in the Tour de France, but I mean, you have this little workshop over here.
I'm totally not an expert here. Yeah. I'm learning from the other mechanics, because it's like comparing road racing with mountain bike and track racing. It also have different setups of the bikes. So here there is only one sprocket, so the gears are very important, and those experienced mechanics, they know it all out of their heads. Here, like for example, here in Ghent, it's a very short track, so they go with a high RPM, so a lower gear than in London.
To spin more.
Yes, because otherwise it's not possible in this small track.
Yeah, because you have to have it.
And that's something that you learn from those other mechanics.
You're here with Mark Cavendish and Ilio. How much do you communicate with them about the bike, and about how much input do they give you? Tire pressure, I don't know.
Yeah, the tire pressure is like the maximum that the tire accepts. So I go with 12 bar.
Okay.
And we were lucky that Cavendish arrived here on Thursday. Okay. So we did some training sessions and some different setups on the bike. And we were able to train here in Kuipke. So that gives me an advantage. Like, I know that the bike setup is perfect. Of course, we have to see during the 6 days if we maybe have to change the handlebar height a little bit or the length. But when they start here, I'm sure we did the maximum we could.
You're wrenching, as we say, for probably the team that's the big favorite this year. I mean, obviously good teams, but Ilio is such a master here. Mark has already won it here. You can tell that Mark is very motivated to do Ghent.
Yeah, because it's not easy to win, and that's why he's motivated. He was here as a world champion when a young guy. He was at 35 laps, I don't know what. Then he came back
He
later.
finished like 35 laps.
Yeah. And then he came later, and he was second with Elio, and then he finally won with Bradley. And so it shows that it's not easy to win. So, and now they know that they have to do the maximum to be podium or winning.
Yeah. You've been Mark's personal mechanic for the last 7 years. You were at Quick-Step for many years, working with all of the greats there. And then when Mark came on board, you became really his personal mechanic to the point where he took you with him to Dimension Data. But you said earlier that this is actually your last race with him because you're staying with Dimension while he'll be moving on.
Yeah.
But you may still find him again on the track.
During 7 years, we started to know each other like in another way, not only a professional way, but also like as friends. So we know that we have the same character, and it's like we became friends. And he told me like even if he's working for another team, we will still keep contact. And if there is a chance that he is doing 6 days, I'm hoping that he calls me that I can be here next year again.
Because you can still work with him on 6 days.
Yeah. If Mark calls me, then I will be there, for sure. If he calls me, I'm just jumping because I do everything for him. He's actually my hero.
Okay.
Like when he started riding, like if you watch YouTube now, all the victories that he had on the road, on the track as well. It's impressive.
Yeah.
But if he calls me, I jump and I go.
Otherwise, you may be back in Service course building up bikes for 2020.
Yes. That's actually my job for next week.
Arriving on the heels of the successful Pinarello Diodo Road e-bike, we quickly got our hands on the Diodo gravel and ended up spending the majority of our local gravel rides on this machine. We loved the Pinarello gravel, so we were excited to see what the masterminds in Treviso would do with a gravel e-bike. The interesting thing is the Diodo gravel really is a blending of the Diodo and gravel, and it takes much of its prowess from the success of those two models. Kudos to Pinarello for going all in with the Diodo platform, while many brands were playing the watch and wait game. We realized a few quick things on the Diodo gravel. One, it's clearly a Pinarello with decades of design, race wins, and attention to detail. It's also aesthetically on point, with its smooth Italian lines and muted gray finish with a pop of orange detail. It reminded us of a Paul Smith-designed Land Rover. I met Waldek Stepniowski on a Gavia cycling trip with Gary and Kit Eriksson in 2017. We were in Italy to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Gary climbing the Gavia. Gary and Cliff invited a few journalists to ride 4 passes in 2 days, which is over 20,000 feet of climbing. Chris Frieswick, who you will meet later, was also on that trip and was sitting next to me at dinner in Bormio with Waldek Stepniowski when he told us his story about defecting from Poland. I never forgot that story, and we are proud to let him tell it here.
And finally tonight, the story that we have been trying to get on, and fortunately we will be able to this evening. John Keating, a story about 3 cyclists from Poland, 3 young men who have found a world of opportunity to practice their sport right here in our country.
You know, when you look back now, you're 18 years old, it felt like it was exciting, and making that decision was like, oh my God, this is my future. This is the directions. There's so much more opportunities in the Western world. It was super exciting, but at the same time, it was super scary, like actually doing it.
It's tough enough being 21 or 23 without being in a strange land, thousands of miles from home, where the language is even more foreign than the lifestyle.
It was not as easy as it sounds, because we just didn't have a plan. You know, we kind of just made a plan as we went along.
Mirek Polowski, Waldek Stepniowski, and Robert Pollicht are 3 of Longmont's newest residents. All 3 were members of the Polish national cycling team. All 3 defected while the team was in Austria last August.
This team wouldn't be the same without Waldek, so I feel like he gives that team character.
Like, he collects all this knowledge that he's had for being on like this team, but many other pro teams before, and he'll just like give you these pieces of wisdom.
Waldek and the Cliff Pro team are kind of one. Like, I can't even imagine one without the other.
Alison Dunlop was one of the riders that joined, that was the first to ask to join the Luna pro team. And she was the one that kind of brought me into the program. So it became from Luna pro team to Cliff pro team. And being part of the Cliff pro team, it's more than just being part of the team. It's being part of the family. My name is Waldek Stepniowski, Waldek for short. I was born in Jelenia Góra, Poland. My role is team manager with Cliff Pro Team. Yeah, the one thing about communist country, sports were a big part of it. I think there was a lot of sport was sort of the escape from day-to-day depression, where when you were doing, and I think that's generally everywhere, sports is sort of like this filter for any kind of depression. You feel free. You feel like you can express yourself to maximum, because you get on the bike and all you think about winning the sprint or being part of survive some climbs. And I think that was us watching as kids watching this peace race that happened, that came to our town, was like this incredible new and exciting thing in that times of depression. But as a kids, that's all we knew. Like we didn't care. We didn't worry about our parents trying to get food on the table. We were like worried about having fun and being exciting and just be part of a team. And in the age of 18, 19, I was part of, as today you would refer, of U23 program on the Polish national team. So it was just a very, very beginning of a serious cycling career at that point. And then we were asked to join the national team for a trip to race in Austria, which racing outside the country was like a huge deal, especially a Western world country. It was definitely much more difficult than traveling to Eastern Germany or Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia at the time. And then so it was super exciting to that opportunity. It was like a greatest news I got from my coach, that we were able to go represent a team, and Polish team in Austria. And so we haven't really planned this. This has sort of happened as I was traveling to Austria. There was a lot of difficulties at the time where you travel with the national team. You don't exactly hold on to your passport. The coach or a national team coach would have control of that. So we were kind of like it was really difficult to make a plan, because there was so many unknowing. Where are we going? Going to a Western world was like, wow, we're going to Austria, really? Like, you cannot leave the borders of Poland. So at the time when I was growing up, so that was like it was a challenge as well. So we couldn't really make a plan. Everything happened on the fly. We went to the race. We started the first stage, and after the first stage, we had an opportunity of meeting up with some people spectating that would give us a ride to a refugee camp that we sort of knew about it, but there was no Google back then. You kind of heard about it, that there was a camp close to Vienna that takes refugee, and you can go there and ask for asylum, and your life is going to become this great new journey. So that was our plan. We sort of planned from just stories of other people defecting in Austria. There was a NATO camp that takes Polish citizens as refugees. And it was just there was no solid information. It was just several other people that have done it, and from letters that they wrote back, we knew that there was a camp existing and close to Vienna. So we kind of had the idea that if we had the opportunity, that we would definitely do it. But I could not really share that story with my parents or with my coaches, because if anybody find out that this was our plan, I would never make the trip. So we kind of had to keep it as 19-year-olds. You had to keep this sort of as a secret to this whole trip. So it was super exciting. But at the same time, it was super scary. Like actually doing it, it was not as easy as it sounds, because we just didn't have a plan. You know, we kind of just made a plan as we went along. And I was lucky enough that two of my other teammates decided to go alone. It was always better with the team as a group of people than individual. Yeah, we got a ride from just total strangers, fans of the bike race, that give us a ride to the refugee camp. And it was they actually dropped us out a mile away from it, because they were afraid as well to get in trouble, because it was not exactly the legal thing to do, to give some refugees a ride to the camp. But they drop us out. They just kind of point us like, that's where it is. And we, on that point, it hit us like, wow, this is happening. This is really, the plan is engaged. We have to follow through now. So we got into the refugee camp, and it was probably 11, 12 o'clock at night, with the campus closed. The guy kind of gave us this look at our passport, and pretty much kicked us out from the camp at midnight. And this is where it hit us. We're like in the country, not speaking the language. We're outside this camp that we really don't know what's going on. There's no people to ask any information. And so we decided to just sleep on it, went on a train station, slept on some wood benches overnight, got up in the morning, went back to the camp, and the whole world was like, oh yeah, we do this. They took our passports, locked us in the room, and seems like everything was okay. It was going, our plan is alive, and a few hours later, the process began, sort of our world started to changing pretty quick. After 2-3 days being in the camp, we learned that we became celebrities on the TV, that everybody knew that 3 riders from national team defected, because obviously they didn't show up at the start of the next stage. So now all of a sudden we become like this. We had a fan club outside in the camp, where people were like, oh yeah, that's the guys sitting locked in the room upstairs, because they had to check on you. There was a period of time where they check on your papers and follow through. You can't really talk to anybody. You're sort of in the lockout for a couple of days, and then our process began. We became a refugee of camp in Traiskirchen, Austria. We became refugees in August in 1984, and because the American consulate takes a Christmas break, I think it's 2-3 months around the December. So our process was a little bit longer, the paperwork. So we had to wait all the way to March. So seven, almost 8 months we were in the camp, and that the life in the refugee camp is not exactly. It's probably the time of my life that I would rather forget. It was probably the lowest and most difficult part of my life. It's just when you have refugees from different countries in the same building, and the police only gets involved when there's a fire in the hallway. There's so many things happen over there. So it was definitely a survival time through. But once again, we create a group of athletes. We exercise in the morning. We did some stretches. We try to get some jobs on outside. We stand outside the camp walls as maybe 50, 60 refugees with a little lunch bag and waiting for somebody to pick you up to take you to work. So just to have some money to survive, And we did all kind of jobs. We work in the wineries, we work in the farms, we work in the constructions. And it was fun. But it was, once again, that being part of a team. It was always part of being part of some kind of team, and that's how you survive. You survive the darkest time, having a mate, having a teammate, having somebody that you can rely on. So.
Peloton's associate editor Will Tracy traveled to Bentonville, Arkansas for an Alt-EF training camp and was lucky enough to sit down with Jonathan Vaughters and take him through the Proust Questionnaire, an honest and quick way to get to know someone. And we didn't ask him about bikes.
All right, first question. What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Boy, well, that's a hard question. I mean, the closest I've experienced to perfect happiness in my life is when because I learned how to fly airplanes somewhat recently, like landing a plane perfectly, like when it's like that perfect little soft touchdown in like really hard, windy, rough conditions. The moment you feel the wheels touch and kind of softly down and you're safe, like for some reason that's like it's just a little glimpse of total contentment.
Satisfying.
Yeah.
Cool. What is your greatest fear?
My greatest fear is stagnation.
What is the trait you most deplore in yourself?
Well, probably that I fear stagnation so much that I'm basically never. I'm essentially like I'm never that happy. I'm always looking just one step further. Like this year we win Tour of Flanders, and as soon as we won Tour of Flanders, the first thought that goes through my mind isn't incredible we won Tour of Flanders. It's okay. Now how do we one up this?
What is the trait you most deplore in others?
Lack of empathy.
Which living person do you most admire?
Boy, that's a real tough one. Warren Buffett.
Any reason? Just because as a businessman?
Well, I just love the functionality of his brain, meaning that he can take really complex, financial situations, and he really just boils it down to, will this company work or will it doesn't. It's not, the fact that he's an incredibly wealthy person is a byproduct of the fact of how well he's boiling down incredibly complex situations into like real simplicity, and that's fascinating to me, and I really admire that.
What is your greatest extravagance?
I have a lot of them. For me, the greatest luxury in life is cheese. I think we discussed this. Yeah, I'm going to stick with it.
All right. What is your current state of mind?
My current state of mind? Focused.
What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Oh, God, no. This is a little hard to describe, but I would say hardworking, but that's not quite it, because what I would say is I think it's a great virtue to work smart. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a very overrated virtue to just work hard. Like, people are always bragging about, like, I worked a 27-hour day today or whatever, right? But, like, if that wasn't done efficiently and intelligently, then, you can waste a ton of time at work. Yeah. So, hardworking, but with a caveat there that actually I do very much appreciate intelligent working and focused working, just not necessarily working long hours for no reason.
Okay. On what occasion do you lie?
What occasion do I? Oh gosh, I think I'd lie quite a few occasions. Let's see. Consistently, I lie when asked whether I took out the recycling, because I always say yes, and I never do.
What do you most dislike about your appearance?
Well, I try not to dislike it, but I could use a little more hair. On my head. Maybe less hair on my body, more hair on my head.
Rearrange it,
yeah. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Which living person do you most despise?
Gosh, I don't really despise a lot of people. In fact, I would say I intentionally avoid despising people, because that's such a strong word. And basically, I feel like when you despise someone, they're owning you more than they're like they have more power over you than you're despising them is worth.
What is the quality you most like in a man?
I would focus. I'm gonna go back to focus again.
Okay. What quality do you most like in a woman?
tenderness. Those are so gender typical. I'm sorry.
Which words or phrases do you most overuse?
I use way too much.
Don't we all?
And then what is the other one that I forget? There's a funny one that I hear. So on and so forth.
Yeah, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
What or who is the greatest love of your life?
Oh boy, I mean, this is coming from a guy who's had far too many girlfriends and breakups and wives and divorces, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, and unfortunately, all of that just is like a big trail of tears for me.
When and where were you happiest?
Again, like this goes back to, what I don't like about myself, and that I'm rarely actually truly happy, or content, I should say. I would say when we won, the moment we found out that the team won the team time trial in the 2011 Tour de France, that was this brief moment of that I was actually, that nothing could have gone better, that I was truly happy because everyone was happy in the team, like your entire organization is happy. It's not just you. So I mean, for me, that was the happiest moment of my life. I also, people always talk about the birth of your son or daughter. I only have one son, and I don't know about his, like when he was born, that almost like proved to be a challenge, but then like I think as I've seen him grow into a man, like maybe let's just call it like his 18th birthday was a moment that I was very, very happy, because it just showed he was, he's succeeding as a human.
Mm-hmm. So which talent would you most like to have?
That assuming that I don't have, right? Ride a unicycle. I wish, or a talent that I wish I had but I don't have, is just like coordination, like being able to catch a ball.
That's probably the story of most pro cyclists.
Yeah.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Well, so far, I always like to think, that there's always something bigger that, I'm going to achieve as opposed to what, but so far I would say that, but it's not just me. So that's the thing is I would say we were able to redirect the culture of cycling in regards to doping.
If you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, what would it be?
Well, I mean, a dog, because dogs are always happy, that like a well cared for, I don't know, a standard poodle, like they're just always happy and they're always loving and they're always empathetic. It's like all these things that I'm not, I'm not always happy. I'm rarely empathetic. I mean, so then this came, I mean, that would be like the perfect contrast.
All right, perfect. Why standard poodle?
Well, just because they're so smart.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of dogs I love. How about an Airedale Terrier? That'd work too, But I mean, or just a really happy mutt. I mean, I just standard poodles. I've never owned a standard poodle, but just because they're smart,
Yeah.
So like when they're happy, they're like genuinely happy.
Okay. What is your most treasured possession?
A painting by Walter Ufer.
What do you regard as the lowest depth of misery?
The lowest depth of misery. I mean, you see a lot of it, honestly. Like, I think complete isolation, like social isolation, is the depth of misery.
What is your most marked characteristic?
My most marked characteristic? That I overthink everything. And it just took me a little too long to answer that question.
What do you most value in your friends?
That they tolerate me.
Who is your hero of fiction?
Bilbo Baggins.
Well, then who are your favorite writers?
Writers?
Writers.
Bill Bryson, right up there. Ernest Hemingway, standard manly stuff.
What historical figure do you most identify with?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Who are your heroes in real life?
I mean, I feel like my heroes in real life are people that are whatever, quote unquote, the unsung hero, right? That they are doing very selfless things and they're not getting any notoriety for it. It's people who just give and give and give, and there's no, that's just the way they are. Like that. Honestly, I don't do nearly enough of that at all. So like the grandiose heroic figure, I don't really have one. But do I look at people and say, wow, it's incredible that, or like, I don't know, these two people that were incredibly passionate about Greenpeace, came to my door the other day, and it was in the middle of a blizzard, and they were going door to door in the middle of a blizzard, just trying to get like 100 signatures and get people to donate $20 a month or whatever. I mean, like that, I think there's more heroism in that than there is in bigger feats that we think of.
Mm-hmm. What is it that you most dislike?
It doesn't matter whether it's French fries or hamburger or whether it's, pheasant under glass at some fancy hotel in Manhattan. But like if it isn't well executed, or I should say poorly executed food, poorly executed, just like, it could be a grilled cheese sandwich, and you can have the most incredible grilled cheese sandwich ever, or you can have a really crap grilled cheese sandwich. I hate it when there's just poorly executed food. Oof.
What is your greatest regret?
Not being aware or more aware of the consequences that my actions have on other people. And there's so many of those examples that I could give, but it's a general, a lot of times I do things without thinking about who it could hurt.
How would you like to die?
Quickly and unexpectedly.
Okay. And then finally, what is your motto?
What is my motto? Well, what is it? There's only two sure things in this life: taxes and death.
Yeah. All right.
The other thing we noticed on the Pinarello Giotto gravel was the variety of riding we could pull off. There are days when you want to go really hard and you can get a similar workout on this bike as on the gravel. You just end up back home much quicker. On recovery days, they made the longer, slower climbs more manageable, and we could recover faster. We are spending a large portion of our riding time now on dirt and gravel, and the Giotto gravel has become a worthy and trusted companion on the trails and hills around our Ojai headquarters. I also wanted to talk about how you and I rode the Stelvio together.
Oh my God, is that what we want to call what I did up that thing?
Chris is working on a feature for the Mansion section in the Wall Street Journal, detailing the connection between cycling and the real estate boom in Girona. Her feature is set to come out January 11th, so make sure to check it out.
Tough climb.
Oh my gosh, it was really more like a crawl than it was a ride for me, I think.
Wow, yeah.
It was so hard.
It was so hard and relentless. I remember when I think we descended together and stopped at just a little cafe. I think it was sort of halfway down, and I was happy to rest.
I just remember when I finally made it to the top, and I know I was the last person at the top, and I was being accompanied by a wonderful woman who was like my wing girl, who was basically pulling me up the last kilometer of that thing. And I got to the top and you were there, and I remember just looking at you, and I said, because the plan was we go down the other side and then back up the other one. And I looked at you and I was like, I'm feeling like a downhill right now. How about you? How about we head on back? And you were like, I love that idea.
It was the right call.
It was the right call. Because even the strongest among us were sort of hating life when they got back from that ride. And I was like, was not fun. But, that was I still look at the photographs and the video from that ride. And I trained really, really hard for that trip. And even though I was probably the weakest person in that group, I was the strongest I'd ever been as a cyclist. So there's very mixed feelings for me about that trip, because on the one hand, I did stuff on that trip that I never in a million years thought I could do. I mean, I got up the Stelvio, what?
Yeah.
On the other hand, I was the very last person, and I was practically like hucking up a lung when I got there. So yeah, so I work for a section of the Wall Street Journal. I'm the deputy editor of the mansion section, which is super high-end real estate, and we have a lot of contacts in the real estate world. And one of them reached out to us and said, "Hey, there's this crazy real estate boom going on in Girona right now." And it's being driven by the fact that there is a huge interest amongst cyclists, triathletes, and other athletes to come to the area because it's sort of heaven when it comes to doing anything outside. And of course, as a cyclist, someone who's really in love with the sport, I said, wow, I'm going to take that story assignment all for my very own self and not let anyone else do it. So I managed to talk my boss, who's also an avid cyclist and triathlete, into covering what is going on there from a real estate standpoint. And of course, while I was there, I had to do some writing. So I did, and it was as amazing and fabulous and otherworldly as you would always hear, as I'm sure you know because I know you've been there.
Yeah, definitely. Did you ride gravel or road, or what did you ride?
We rode road. Yeah, okay. I was fortunate enough as part of my reporting, I connected with a bunch of people who are there full time, former cyclists, current cyclists that have started companies in the area, and I reached out to them and said, "Hey, I'm going to be in town. I want to talk to you about like what brought you there and what you're doing." And the number of tourist licenses over the last 10 years has gone from a dozen to over 700. I mean, they're just exploding there. And they're really filling a gap in hotel space, although there's a lot of new hotel capacity coming online there as well. And now it's funny because, I mean, the amount of construction that's going on there where people are buying up these beautiful old ancient, they're really ancient too. I mean, the old town of Girona is 1,000 years old. I mean, it's just incredible. And their renovations are just completely taking over the old town. It's really cool. But there's also just Girona in general is so outdoors focused. As someone that cycles a lot on the East Coast, specifically right now in New Jersey and New York, to go somewhere where people aren't angry at you for being on the road is actually kind of magical. And I was cycling with Lee and Louise and their company's marketing director, and we were riding two abreast, 2 and 2. And I was like, every time a car would come up behind, I would yell out, "Car back!" And they were like, "Oh, honey, you don't need to do that here," because people will just like wait or go around you, and it's safe. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I can't even get my head around that concept. Yeah, it was really truly like being at cycling heaven. And not to mention that the terrain is magical, the weather is magical, the condition of the roads themselves are like better than anywhere probably I've ever ridden, except for like literally newly laid pavement on a small section of road somewhere on the East Coast,
Will Tracy was on the ground and in the mud in Washington to cover one of the more surprising and inspiring cross nationals in a long time. Here is his recap.
Equipped with cowbells and noisemakers, beanies, and rubber boots, cyclocross fans came ready to party in the mud Sunday, December 15th, as the United States elite riders descended on Lakewood, Washington. And they were not disappointed after getting treated to one of the most consequential nationals in years. For the first time in a long time, the winners were not named Compton, nor were they riding a Cannondale. From the gun, Gage Hex surged to the front of the men's elite race, with music blazing and fans screaming at every turn.
I think I went out a little harder than I planned, but it ended up working out well. I knew that every descent it was going to benefit to be out front because there's so much gaps that were forming coming out of these chutes. Yeah. So it's just like every time I came into a drop, I wanted to be up front, and that worked for the first lap.
Kerry Warner was right behind him, with three-time defending champion Stephen Hyde and his teammate Curtis White chasing. On the second lap, Heck took a descent too hot, careening off the course and getting tangled up in the course tape, but impressively managing to stay upright. The incident led to some controversy after Warner crashed running into the tape wrapped around Heck's bike. Now Heck was alone, with Hyde and White breathing down his neck. But the two teammates couldn't quite reel in the 21-year-old, whose lead rose to over 15 seconds by the final lap. Heck certainly wasn't taking anything for granted, though, until the very end.
I mean, with a course as hard as this one is technical, it's kind of like you never really know that you have it until you're on the road section again.
In the women's race, 15-time defending champion Katie Compton went back and forth with Courtney McFadden early on. Compton made a move for the lead in the first lap, sweeping around McFadden on a descent. But the field was determined not to let Compton just ride away with the 16th consecutive victory. McFadden caught up to her again on the next run-up, a steep, muddy pitch, and a select group of 4 formed, with Rebecca Fahringer and Clara Honsinger. But come lap 2, Compton started to fall off the pace as Fahringer hit the gas, with Honsinger in tow. By lap 3, Honsinger had taken over and started to build a lead, and by the last lap, as the gap began to push toward half a minute, the excitement around the course for a new national champion was palpable. Placing her hands on her helmet after her victory salute, the 22-year-old Honsinger, who was just 7 years old when Compton won her first national championship, looked in disbelief. For her part, Compton was gracious in defeat, smiling and waving to the crowd as she crossed the line for a bronze medal after Fahringer took second.
Everybody's cheering around the whole course, and like just the support and like the love I was feeling the whole way around. So like the start-finish stretch, just the cheering and stuff, I was going to enjoy it.
But like all things, a win streak can't last forever.
I knew it was going to end at some point. Clara had a great race today. She rode really well. She's getting faster and faster, so it's inevitable it's going to happen.
Compton would go on to be part of the Stars and Stripes presentation on the podium. But this time, she was presenting the jersey, not putting it on. With both winners having displaced the sport's established guard before the age of 23, the future of USA cyclocross looks like it may have already arrived.
We hope you enjoyed episode 2 of Aerogramme, and if you did, please check out our award-winning print and digital magazine at pelotonmagazine.com.